Welcome. I'm Linda Casey, Editor-in-Chief of Brand Experience Packaging Magazine. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second part of BXP's and VMSD's new two-part town hall series about the impacts of COVID-19 on brand design. Before we begin, I'd like to share a couple of housekeeping notes. As this is a live event, you can ask questions using the Q&A widget. If you don't see the Q&A widget, simply click on the Q&A menu item on the bottom of your screen. John will be answering questions live after his presentation. And a quick reminder that this event will be available on demand approximately 1 hour after broadcast. We know that there's a lot of stress on everyone's internet bandwidth right now, so if you are experiencing bandwidth problems like image pixelization or audio stuttering, please remember this isn't the only opportunity you have to view this event. It will be available online. You can also reach out to our webinar producer, Christine Yancey, via the Q&A widget with any technical problems and questions. So thanks, everyone. At this time, I would like to invite David to take over the virtual mic and to share a few words and introduce today's speaker. Welcome, David.
Hi, thank you, Linda. I'm David Luxius, President and CEO of COG LLC. For those of you who are not familiar with COG, here's a quick overview. We are a brand packaging development and prototyping company headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, specializing in creating superior consumer engagement with brands. We provide customized services and solutions during the critical brand packaging development phases to facilitate innovation, optimize design-to-print development, accelerate speed to market, and reduce and avoid costs. You can learn more about how we drive faster, smarter packaging development at cogdriven.com. Now, on behalf of all the COGs, it is our great pleasure to sponsor this timely and relevant event and to introduce John Gleason, the founder and president of A Better View Strategic Consulting. Today, in the second of his two-part series, John will take a client-side perspective on managing brands, supporting your agency partners, and finding balance under the pressures and implications of COVID-19. Many of John's insights will come from a recent survey he conducted of nearly 100 clients and agencies on the global impact of COVID-19 as it relates to people's physical and emotional safety and business concerns. Thank you, John, for bringing these timely and relevant insights to us today, and welcome.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I look forward to sharing some perspective with you regarding the COVID situation, following up on the session we did last week, which was focused mostly on agencies. This one will be focused primarily on a client perspective, that the impact on clients, things clients might consider doing to navigate these difficult challenges. One of the things that I've seen throughout my career is the notion that if you have a question, if you have a concern, if you're experiencing something, you are very likely not alone, despite the fact that you might feel that you're the only one going through that in any given moment. And that kind of is the title of this session, is Isolated Work Environments, but You're Not Alone, or We Are Not Alone. Briefly, what we'll go through is a little bit of setup. I'll share some context, and for those of you who did tune in or see the recorded version of last week's session for agencies, some of the context is going to be the same. Some economic information, the spins on some of those things might be slanted towards client or brand side perspective, but some of that will be similar, and then will lead into client implications and client recommendations. So first, just very briefly, for those of you who I've not had the privilege to meet, I spent 20 years at Procter & Gamble wearing a number of hats over that time period. Things that I saw and experienced at P&G were catalysts and inspirations for me to leave P&G. Started A Better View 13 years ago, and what we try to do is help brands and corporate organizations elevate design as a strategic business competence, not just a decoration station. We try to help agencies become more relevant for the market that they hope to serve and the clients they hope to inspire. And in doing so, hopefully those agencies can become better businesses as well. And then the third area is the intersection of those worlds. Matchmaker, marriage counselor, chief negotiator for one side or the other, hopefully bringing sanity and clarity to client-agency relationships. A big thank you to the BXP team, Jerry Brownstein, Linda Casey, Christine Yancey, for your invitation for me to be a part of this session and to lead both parts 1 and 2. An equally large thanks to David and COG for stepping in as a sponsor for this series. And for those of you who are not familiar with COG, you should take a look. They have a fantastic set of processes and capabilities to help accelerate your innovation and your brand initiatives. And then the last thank you is to all of you who are investing your time and energy and, I suppose, curiosity with us today. David mentioned that some of this insight was born out of surveys and interviews that I started to undertake at the beginning of March, when I started to see some of the circumstances start to escalate or, I guess in some cases, decline throughout that very week. And I've also had the privilege to be able to coach a number of corporate and agency organizations through some of these. And some of those were just simply very quick, hey, John, can I get your feedback on something? So if you do have questions, drop them into the Q&A box or reach out to me afterwards, and we'll see if we can help. So setting the context, most of you are very familiar with what's happening. Because it's impacting you, your clients, your families, your friends. There were a series of measures put in place primarily to preserve health and keep this virus from spreading, as well as to manage the capacity of our healthcare systems. And those measures then led to economic implications, which, for very real reasons, impact humans. And one of the driving forces in all of this is this notion of uncertainty. When things are unclear or uncertain, we tend to write our own stories, and in many cases, those are bad case or worst case versions of those stories. So those things aren't helping how we all feel through this process. As we move into this with respect to brands and consumers, one of the important things to note is consumer confidence. Not surprisingly, given everything that's going on, there has been a dramatic decline in consumer confidence. This version of a consumer confidence barometer that's done by GfK, a global research company, indicates declines. The measure that they look at are personal financial situation over the last 12 months, as well as the next 12, and your view of general economic situations, again, prior 12 months and looking forward 12 months. And all of these are the fastest drops that GfK have seen since they started undertaking this barometer. So much so that it typically is a barometer that's measured quarterly. They decided to accelerate this to monthly when things started to fall into place. And they actually have dropped in bi-weekly versions of this, given the rate of deceleration, if you will, of consumer confidence. Another view of consumer confidence is taken on by an organization called the Conference Board. And the Conference Board is a nonprofit business, economic, and leadership organization. They run the official Consumer Confidence Index that is used in many countries around the world, as well as run leading economic indicators for about 60 countries around the world. This happens to be a snapshot that they took in January of 2020. before any significant economic shutdowns and health restrictions. And as you can see from this metric, there are a number of countries that are above 100, and indices above 100 indicate a positive consumer confidence, and indices below 100 obviously correlate to a negative or more negative consumer confidence. And as you can see, the U.S., Canada, the U.K., Germany, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, India, Indonesia, Philippines all showed positive consumer confidence. They're in the process of collating the next version of this that should be published in the next couple of weeks. But one of the things that I'll continue on from here is how does consumer confidence play both for COVID-19, which is on the far right of this chart, moving from above that 100, the index of 100 for consumer confidence, to well below it, approaching 85 or on its way to 80. This index was taken in early March. The other thing that they wanted to do was map this against other crises. And the areas that have gray underneath them are official economic recessions. And so you can see that there are correlations between things that cause humans to lose confidence in their economy or in how their world and their life stacks up in that economy. And continuing on this path is one of the things that we've seen with respect to COVID is there are varying levels of impact, which also drive varying levels of confidence and implications. This particular one takes a look at regional differences. The first column of numbers that are colored, first of all, shows the largest single month drop in 50 years since the Conference Board has measured this factor. And you'll see, for example, at the very top, the East South Central, which is Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky, saw the largest decline in consumer confidence with respect to their region. And most other regions also saw enormous drops, with the exception of New England, which had not, at the time of this study, had not seen significant impact from the COVID-19 health crisis. The other column of numbers is an expectations index, which is our view of the coming 6 months, looking forward into 6 months. And you'll see that there are also regional differences. The Pacific region, the Mid-Atlantic, which is Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and the West North Central, which is essentially the Plain States, had the lowest expectation of what to expect in the coming 6 months. The Mid-Atlantic, Middle Atlantic, and Pacific, not surprising because they were ravaged by a number of COVID cases and dense cells of COVID impact. The other part of confidence then is a business confidence. The Conference Board, also you should know at the Conference Board, I run a peer-to-peer council of people who are heads of design from about 25 or 30 large corporations. So I get a peek into what's really happening through that council, but also get access. By the way, all of the information that I'm sharing with you from the Conference Board is publicly available at the URL at the bottom of each page. And a copy of this presentation will be made available when the recorded version is distributed. So with respect to business confidence or CEO confidence, this is typically a quarterly metric as well. The Conference Board saw a number of factors as implications continued to accelerate and added a couple additional metrics. So the typical quarterly metric is the top one that is mostly in blue. For this particular metric, numbers above 50 indicate positive confidence, and numbers below 50 indicate negative responses. And you'll see a pattern that is generally declining for each of those metrics, with the exception of the expectations of the economy or the expectations of my industry 6 months in the future, where CEOs actually saw believe that there's going to be a positive increase in the most recent metric that was taken at the end of March. And I think this signifies their belief that because this is health related and we're beginning to show signs of turning the corner, that there's a belief that they will see some positive impact in the coming 6 months. Whereas during the financial crisis in 2008, that was a broad economic financial collapse that extended 3, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on what industry you were in. And also with respect to CEO confidence, some of the activities and the concerns that they shared during the most recent study at the end of March showed that 100% of the CEOs involved were working on and concerned about getting their teams working remotely and getting that cranked up. Almost 90% of them felt that there would be an impact on their sales and profits. Further down the list, you'll see that there are impacts on investments. The concern, more than half were concerned that they would have to reduce or furlough their workforce. And one of the interesting metrics in all of this, and perhaps a little surprising, but if you dig deeper, maybe not as surprising, only 11% of the CEOs surveyed indicated that they would likely switch suppliers during this time. So it relays some of their thoughts on let's lean on the supply chains and the partners that we know, those with whom we have confidence and reliability, instead of trying to create additional turmoil and change in their supply networks. The other interesting thing that the conference board has taken a look at is how have investment markets been impacted by various crises. On this chart, you'll see two health crises that happened before COVID, MERS in 2014 and SARS in 2003. And you'll see that after the beginning of either of these crises, the markets stabilized and in fact rose a little bit for MERS, much more for SARS, and almost as if SARS was non-existent in the impact on economics. 9/11 is also in there, and again, that saw a big dip in the first 10 or 20 days, and then the market stabilized and increased a little bit. Not surprisingly, the Lehman collapse in 2008 was all about financial crisis, and it weakened the entire marketplace, and it exposed a whole bunch of other financial challenges, and the market was devastated. And COVID-19, because of the economic shutdown of most of what we're seeing, it has seen a dramatic decline. Now, this measure was only taken through the middle of March, not through the middle or end of April where we are now. So you'll see some continued declines, a little bit of rebound. The conference board has a metric on the impact on oil, the oil price during many of these crises. And if any of you are tracking markets, we hit an all-time record where oil was negative $40 a barrel yesterday. People were paying customers to take oil off their hands because nobody's driving. Industry isn't open. Nobody's using these things. So George Nakuto, you had a question in the last session about the impact on sustainability. If anybody has a place to store oil or oil derivatives, there may be some incredibly inexpensive plastics that end up in our environment. So it may have a negative impact on sustainability efforts. And then the other thing that the conference board has done is putting their masterful economic minds behind scenarios for recovery. And in March, they had a series of scenarios that showed an early reboot, a May reboot, what they called a summer V-shape and a fall recovery, which was more of a smooth arc, a decline and increase. In just a few weeks, you'll see from the chart on the left to the more recent, which was just released this week, that they've revised those forecasts